I want to use this show to take you places you've never been and introduce you to people that you've never talked to. Our guest on today's show was a high school football player who had no scholarship offers. He walked on at his college. He caught one touchdown pass in his college career, and yet he played 9 seasons in the NFL. JJ Birden joins us on today's show. He's got a story to tell. It's one of perseverance. It's one of grit. He is a guy who has seemingly beat the coverage. He's a fantastic interview and a great story. Stick around for that, plus the Monday mailbag. We've got some questions about the Pac-12 and the Blazers owner, terrible Tom Dundon. We'll talk about it coming up. Really excited to have JJ Birden join the show. Such a good story. You are a story of perseverance, and we're going to get way into it. How you doing, man? Where are you today?
I'm doing great. I am in hot Phoenix, Arizona.
I love it. I love it. Do you like the heat? Is that somewhere or was it just playing career you found your way there?
Yeah, I think I love the heat. And every time I played in a hot climate area, I would say to my wife, what about living here? Living here. And then finally I got her to buy into getting out of the Oregon rain and down to the heat.
Let's go back to high school. Can we start even maybe before high school? You grow up and you end up at Lake Ridge High School, Lake Oswego, Oregon. And your senior year, I think you're like $140. You weigh 140 pounds. But were you thinking football back then, or what was childhood like for JJ Birden?
I was not thinking football at all. I was locked in on track. You know, the dream was the Olympics, and track was really the focus. But after being all state wide receiver my senior year and not having one Division I school recruit me in football, I took it kind of personal, and it was really about the chip on my shoulder. And let me just prove these guys wrong.
You end up walking on at Oregon. You know, where was your mind as you're trying to walk on?
I think it was because Oregon was the only Division I track school who didn't think it was a crazy idea if I tried to walk on one year. And Bill Dillinger and John Gillespie gave me their blessing. They just said, you got to run the first year, and if you can convince Rich Brooks the next year, you have our blessing. And so Rich was there, Bob Toledo, and I wore him down, and Rich finally said, okay, you can walk on, but there's no guarantees.
Yeah. And so when you go back, like maybe to high school, was your mom telling you, supporting you, or what did you watch her do as you were growing up? Because I know that she was real important to you.
Yeah, I watched my mom really work hard. You know, my mom dropped out of high school her junior year, but she worked so hard to take care of my brother and sister and myself. And I think that's the one thing she instilled in me, was that you do what it takes. If it means you got to become a welder, like my mom was, to take care of your family, that's what you do.
You watch mom as a welder. That's not a job that a lot of moms have.
It's not. And it was interesting because I'd watch her come home from work every day, the big boots and the big jacket, and my brother and I would help her, you know, take it off. But it just set a good example for myself to see that sometimes hard work is what it takes to take care of your family.
How did she find welding?
Well, you know, she was working at Nabisco first, and a friend of hers told her that FMC, which typically only hired men, was actually opening up the opportunity for women. Mm. And so she and her friend applied for it, and she got the job, and she was the first woman that they hired there to be a welder. And she had a lot of challenges because a lot of the guys weren't real kind to her. Sure. But she fought through it and proved everybody wrong and did really well.
I think it's interesting to parallel with you as well. So you go to Oregon, you walk on, you don't have a lot of success right away, but you keep working. What kept you working?
I think it was just really that drive to show them that I was capable of playing D1 football. And I think the first 2 years I was backing up Lou Barnes and Scott Holman, and I hardly ever played. But during that time, I was just getting better. I was watching them. I was learning. I was putting in the reps in practice because I knew at some point I was going to get my shot, and I just wanted to make sure I was ready for it.
What do you remember about Brooks, other coaches, Aliotti coming in, I think a little later, but what do you remember of that time and that coaching staff?
Well, actually, who wasn't there? Bob Toledo was the offensive coordinator. But I just remember how intimidating Rich Brooks was. He was very like old school. You didn't look him in the eye, but he demanded the best from you. And I had no problem with that. He just wanted you to work hard. But Bob Toledo was the one that really intrigued me because he was the first one my junior year that said, you're going to get a shot in the NFL one day. And I told him, you're crazy. No, I'm not, but he saw it in me before I actually saw it in myself.
I love that. You go to the combine and you run well. And you'd always run well. Were you confident going in there that you could turn some heads?
I was confident I would test well, but I was very intimidated because I was there with guys like Tim Brown and Sterling Sharp and Aaron Cox, these guys that were either All-Americans or some of the best college players. So I was a little intimidated. And I'll tell you, the very first drill we did was the quick out drill. Quarterbacks were throwing harder. The ball was different, and everybody was wearing gloves. I wasn't wearing gloves back then. So I literally dropped my first 2 passes. And I said, JJ, you got to snap out of this. And then I got going.
The 40 time you ran got the attention of Marty Schottenheimer. And this proves to be one of those moments that's a pivot point in your life. Were you aware at the time that he had noticed you, or is it just later, you're an 8th round draft pick and you figure they saw something in you?
I was not aware that the Browns were looking at me because when football teams came to Oregon, they came there to work out Anthony and maybe Roland Poussier. And I was kind of like, well, hey, Birden's here. Let's work him out. So a couple of teams worked me out. So I wasn't really thinking that I was going to get drafted. But when I did get drafted by the Browns, I didn't even know who Marty Schottenheimer was. I was like, okay, who is this? So I was totally unfamiliar. But John, I got to ask Marty sometime later. I said, Marty, why did you draft me? I had 1 touchdown in college and no stats. And he says, well, kid, once I heard you ran the 42-inch high hurdles and you're 5'10", I thought if you can run the 42-inch high hurdles at your size, I think you have the mindset to play in the NFL. And so never forgot that,
I have to think that there wasn't a receiver drafted that had 1 touchdown reception in college. How do you not let that kind of psychologically drag you down? And because everybody deals with the imposter complex on some level. How do you not look around in training camp and go, do I belong here? Or were you dealing with that?
Well, just my mentality has always been, let me prove you wrong, because when I first walked into fall camp that my freshman year or my second year, there were like 13 wide receivers and I was like number 12 or 11. But the mentality was, how fast can I move up the depth chart? Because I knew physically I had the ability. It was just showing them that I could do it. So I just knew it was a matter of time. And it wasn't overconfidence, John, because I knew I had the gift, but also I was a hard worker and an intelligent football player too.
JJ, you just examine your story. You go back to high school, and yes, your senior year, you get some accolades, but it didn't happen right away for you. College, it didn't happen right away. Didn't happen right away in the NFL either. And I know you had a dream of being in the Olympics. How hard was it to see 1988 come and go and where you were, or were you at peace with it?
No, that's probably my biggest athletic regret, that I didn't get to finish my senior year, because I had been working towards my senior year, the NCAA meet, which was at Oregon. I was jumped well at Oregon, and that was the Olympic year too. So everything was gearing towards that. So when I tore my ACL ligament in the Browns minicamp, John, I was crushed. I mean, I was really crushed, and that moment almost broke me. But Dr. Bergfeld, who performed my ACL surgery, he said, JJ, if you work hard enough, you could come back faster. And once he said that, that was the goal,
Yeah. That comes from somewhere though, doesn't it? Like, because this wasn't like you flipped a switch and suddenly you had the mettle or you had the perseverance like that. It has to go back to mom's welding gear and watching your mom work hard.
Yeah, it does. And that, and part of just, I was always the little guy, grade school, junior high, high school. And I was always surrounded by skeptics and people that doubted me. So that was really always the motivation I needed, at least to get my foot in the door, know?
So you recover from the ACL injury. Things don't go all that well with the Browns, right? And you end up, I think it was you go to Dallas, is that right? Or you're in camp with the Cowboys, and then eventually Schottenheimer ends up back with the Chiefs. Were you aware of kind of what was happening? Because things have to fall into place. It's such a league of opportunity and seizing the opportunity. Where was your mind at that time?
Well, once Dallas decided not to sign me back, I knew physically I was ready. I mean, now I'm 100%. But I knew that going into this third year, as my third year, I had credit for 2 seasons, and I hadn't even played in a game yet. So it was really about making the right choice, because this is my third year, and Marty was in Kansas City, and they didn't have a wide receiver that was running under 4.5. And I thought, they need the speed. Marty's there. He's probably going to give me the best opportunity. So I knew that was the right choice.
When he brings you in, again, there's a no promises thing. This is the NFL. You went right to work, and again, it doesn't happen right away. This is your story. Like, it doesn't happen right away for you, but you keep grinding, you keep working. What happens with this final game of the season? I think it was what year was that where you get the opportunity?
Oh, that was 1991.
Okay. Final game, right?
The Raider game. And because 90 was kind of like my first introduction. I scored my first touchdown, but I wasn't really the guy yet. And then the next year they had drafted another wide receiver. So I wasn't getting as many opportunities. But like you said, I just kept grinding in practice because I knew I was going to get a shot. And finally, toward the end of the season, Marty and Al Saunders just said, you know what, you've worked so hard this year that we're going to give you a shot. And I think it was their way of saying, hey, let's see if we have something. If not, we're moving on. But I took advantage of it.
Did you sleep well the night before that game?
No, I didn't. I didn't really, because, during practice week, I was getting a lot of reps. I knew I was going to get the ball more than ever. And I just kept saying, visualize it, JJ, see yourself in the end zone, so that when the moment came, John, I was ready. And 8 catches, 188 yards, and 2 touchdowns over 50 yards. That really catapulted my career.
Who's your first call after that game?
Probably my Uncle Sonny. My Uncle Sonny was the one who believed in me in high school, that said I was going to play in the NFL, and he made me give him my first NFL touchdown. And he believed in me before I believed in myself. So I was like, Uncle, I think I finally made it.
Yeah, you need those moments. So that subsequent post game into the off season, I know there were playoffs and stuff, but do you have conversations with Marty Schottenheimer at that point? Does he come to you and say, hey, you got to be part of my plan, or do you just know that you're part of the plan?
Well, I really didn't know. And during that off season, Marty calls me into his office, and I'm thinking like, okay, what did I do? And Marty goes, how would you like to be a starter in the NFL? And John, I was like, what? I was just trying to stay on the roster. But that was the beginning of me going from a guy trying to make the team to like now being a starter. And I started the remaining 5 years of my career.
Yeah. I mean, you look back at what you accomplished in the NFL, it is nothing short of remarkable. It's such a good story of perseverance. Did you ever think about quitting?
Well, I think I took it year by year. My goal first, John, was to become vested, retirement. And that was year 4. So once I got to year 4, it was like, let me see if I can play 5 more years. Then it was like, let me see if I can play 6 years. And by the time I got to the 9th year, I had already been planning for life after the game. And I thought, you know what? I got 9 years in the NFL. No one expected me to do this. I'm done. And I just walked away.
Was that, I talked to, Anthony Newman about him walking away from the game, and he regrets, he said, I should have played 1 more year. There's a guy who played 12 or 13 years, Alex Molden too. These are guys that you crossed paths with frequently, but did you ever run into those guys in game situations, all those Oregon DBs that were back there in the day?
Absolutely. Had quite a few games against Anthony. I remember when he was with the Saints and Alex was with the Saints, and oh my goodness, we're just talking trash the entire game, just having a ball. It's kind of cool, to play against someone you grew up with and you're both playing at the highest level. So those were memorable moments.
What were those guys like as competitors? Because, Newman's, they're both, heavily involved in high school football. Newman coaching at Westland High School now as the head coach. It's interesting to see that.
Yeah, I know. I never saw Newman as a head coach. A coach, yes, but I'm really impressed to see that he's a head coach because he's very knowledgeable. He understands the game. And I just think there's always something a little extra when you have a coach who made it to the highest level. They really understand what it takes to be the best of the best.
I look at NFL locker rooms now, and partly because of guys like you, all those guys are so talented. I mean, and there are people you just don't know about, you haven't heard about, who are just waiting in the wings. Does it feel like it's a meritocracy in the NFL, or does it feel a little arbitrary because sometimes a great player doesn't get an opportunity, or a quarterback ends up with the wrong team and the wrong system? What do you make of all that?
Yeah, everything has to be perfect. It really does. And I was in a couple situations where I outplayed the draft choice, but he's supposed to make the team. And, the Chiefs cut me and they brought me back. But, one thing I try to tell athletes that you can't control what people think, what people say. All you can control is how you show up, how you prepare, and how you give your best. Because even though when I was kind of bouncing around, I knew I was auditioning for 31 other teams, and I truly believe I was going to make it at some point.
You have done really well in life after football. You've got obviously a big family. I want to know about the foster kids and adoption, and why did that call to your heart, you and your wife?
Well, it was unexpected for one thing, and I knew that there were some challenges happening in Tulsa with my sister and brother-in-law. But when my nephew called out, he called me and hey, uncle, he begged me to come out there and check on him. But John, when I went to Tulsa, it was a lot worse than I thought. And next thing you know, I'm rounding up 5 children, and we're in a courthouse, and judge says, you're the next of kin. What would you like to do? Because we're going to place them in 5 separate foster homes. But having a wife like Raina, who's very giving and very caring and very serving, she's like, hey, could you sleep at night knowing we could have made a difference? And so we, as a team, we made the decision, and it wasn't easy. Trust me, it wasn't. But I think our why was stronger. We just wanted to keep all 5 of the children together. And we did it. 8 children, and it was pretty exciting, but man, some crazy times.
How did the other 3 kids react to having 5 new siblings all of a sudden?
There was an adjustment. I mean, my 3 children were like, first, they were kind of shocked. Then they were excited because it was a bigger family. Yeah. And then they weren't so excited because at the time we were in a smaller house. So we were stacked on each other. But when we moved to Arizona, we got a bigger house, we had more room, and I think the children really understood the impact they were making on their cousins as well.
You've got a good heart, JJ Birden, and you've got a new book that's out. I want to tell people about it. Beat the Coverage. Tell us about this book. What made you decide to do this?
Yeah, this is something I've been looking for some time, trying to find, a message that truly resonates with me. And as a wide receiver, as you know, my job was every single play, what's the coverage? Is it man or is it zone? And coverage is what stood between me and the end zone. And I started thinking, John, everybody faces coverage. They face something that's stopping them or interfering with them achieving their goals. And that's been my life. And I've developed the habit of beating the coverage. And so the book has now given me the opportunity to share my framework, how I survived 9 years in the NFL, and sharing it with others because I believe it's a framework that can be applied in many areas of life.
You can go to beatthecoverage.com if you want to get the book. You can also go to JJ's website, which I will link in the show notes here as well. I'll link them both. As we're talking through high school, college, challenges in the NFL, what strikes me is each time you were able to identify sort of the goal and you compartmentalize it a little bit. Is that accurate? Like you can say, hey, don't let it overwhelm you, but focus on the one thing you need to do today that's in front of you.
Yeah, that's always been my approach. It's like, okay, here's the goal. How are we going to get there? What is the game plan? In high school, I did that. When I was recruited, I had a game plan. I strategically picked the school that was going to let me walk on. And even while I was in the NFL, it was the same thing. It's just, I've always been very organized, very methodical. And it's just something that stayed with me to this day.
How does your time in the NFL sort of shape what you're doing now? Meaning, like, let's say it doesn't happen. Let's say you don't come back from the ACL injury. What are you doing now?
I'm probably I'm probably pursuing track. I mean, if I don't come back from the
Yeah.
ACL, I'm probably taking another year of training and I'm going to scratch that itch. I'm going to pursue track and see how far I can go. But if that doesn't happen, I probably would have became a teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher, a coach in some capacity. Even John, when I was playing with the Chiefs during the offseason, I would do substitute teaching in the school district just a couple years just to see if this was the avenue, the route I was going to take, just in case.
What was that like going into a classroom?
Oh, it was crazy. I would use my legal name, JJ Birden, but by the time the end of the day, everybody knew I was the Chiefs player, and it just caused a little chaos. But it was fun, It just being able to pour into other people, children, because so many people poured into me during my journey.
You think back, I mean, and so the kids figure out you're a Kansas City Chief. I mean, that gives you some cred. It's not like they're going to misbehave on you like, Joe McGee walking in there.
Yeah, I know, but they would just drill me with questions. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, guys, we got some work to do here. But doing that led me to coaching the Lee Summit hurdlers when I was with the Chiefs too. So I coached track 3 years to, one, see if I wanted to coach, and two, work out with the kids doing the speed workouts. And so they actually helped me prepare for the season as well.
What do you make of what's happened to college football and sort of the business of it?
It's changed a lot. There are some things I agree with. I mean, I've always felt athletes should be paid something. I was a poor college student and on scholarship, which I'm grateful for, but a little extra money would have been nice. I just don't like the system they came up with, the NIL. They've got to, if they can figure it out, have something a little more organized, a little more, controlled, so to speak.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of the transfer portal. I understand it. I know there's situations where it's warranted. But when I look at myself, John, just the 2 years sitting on the bench at Oregon, that's when I got better. That's when I got my mindset right. That's what got me prepared for the NFL. And so I just worry about some of the athletes today just kind of getting used to, if they don't like a situation, they go somewhere else. They don't like their coach, they go somewhere else. That's not the real world, So that's my only concern.
Yeah, because if you really think about your story, there would have been so many times that somebody could have got in your ear and said, there's an opportunity for you at Arizona State. There's an opportunity for you at UCLA. You need to get out of here. They're not utilizing your talents. You're too good to be here. And that becomes hard for a 18, 19, 20-year-old kid to not listen to, especially if it's coming from family members.
Yeah, it really does. And I feel bad because sometimes I wish these young athletes had mentors or others in their ears that don't have an ulterior motive. If I could mentor some of these college athletes, the perspective I would give them would be my perspective, knowing that, hey, what's going to make you better is grind it out, is learning while you're in practice and just getting better, because that's going to prepare you for the next level or prepare you for life after the game when you've got to support a family and you don't like your boss, but you still got to show up and do your job.
I always say that successful people, successful sports franchises, it's not accidental. You can always make sense of the success. I can make sense of your success. And I love that you've written this book and others, you're sharing your story. What is that like for you to stand in front of the room? You're talking to a group of, a business or a company that's paying you to come in and motivate them on a Wednesday. And, I'm sure that they all want, like those kids in that substitute teacher class, they all want the stories. How do you put your message together in a way that gives them some substance, but entertains them as well?
Well, I like to start out with my highlight tape, and I do it for a particular reason, because when I walk on stage and, companies, business professionals see me, right away, they're like, there's no way you played in the NFL. And then when I tell them I played at 157 pounds, but once they see the highlighted, that social proof, I have their attention. And from there, I can pretty much show them what I did to play in the NFL, to stay in the NFL, and how these skills are transferable in the business world too. Because when I retired, I owned a couple companies for 10 years. I was out there and I understand what it takes to succeed as a business professional too. And it's just a lot of similarities, a lot of crossover from being a professional athlete versus being a business professional.
I even look at the great wide receivers of your era, and you think about a guy like Jerry Rice, not the fastest guy, not, but what made him good as you watched other guys, or who were some other guys that you looked at in the league and you just really kind of looked over and admired what they'd done?
Jerry won because his work ethic. He was not known for his speed, but he practiced hard. He ran every route hard, and watching Jerry in games made me better, because typically sometimes a wide receiver, if they're not getting the ball, they might not give 100% effort. But with Jerry, whether he was running a 5-yard hitch or a go, he always came off the ball the same way, full speed. And that elevated my game too, because I thought, man, I run a 4.3. If I can play fast, think about how much more difficult it would be to cover me. So watching him, I watched Webster Slaughter, really good bump and run, man-to-man. I studied a lot of wide receivers because, John, early on, I got my wake-up call in my first NFL training camp with Cleveland. I got jammed, thrown to the ground, and I realized that if I didn't beat man-to-man coverage, I was not going to last very long. And that's kind of like maybe the birth of beat the coverage. That's really where it all started.
Yeah, because if you think about it, I mean, you're 157 pounds in the NFL. I got to think in those one-on-ones in training camp, the DBs are going, I'm just going to jam this guy. He's not getting off the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and that was year 1 and year 2. But by the time year 3 came, all the work I had been doing behind the scene, beating man-to-man became one of my competitive advantages. And I got to the point where you're in a game, you're on a line, and that DB is looking at you, and he's worried, because if he doesn't get his hands on me, I'm gone. And I think it really became more of one of my assets, because I understood what the defense was doing and how to beat him, or how to find a hole is one of the points I make in my book.
His book is called Beat the Coverage. You can get it at beatthecoverage.com. JJ Birden, we've talked about Coach Prime, Deion Sanders. You played against him. What's that like?
Oh, man. The best of the best. I mean, I played against the best cornerbacks during the 90s, and Deion was in a whole class by himself. And even the first time we played him when I was at Atlanta, I remember head coach June Jones telling Jeff George, don't throw to Deion's side. So the entire game, we didn't even throw to his side, but the second game we went after him, but he was just hard to beat. I mean, even when you had him beat, he had ability to bait the quarterbacks. Something you do as a little guy in the hood, playing flag football in the street, but he could bait the quarterbacks, and he had amazing recovery speed.
So you mean by bait, he would make it look like he was beat, but he wasn't? He was just like, go ahead and throw the ball, I'll recover?
Yeah. I had him beat on a couple of fades, because Deion had a couple little tendencies, and that's the thing. Even the great players, they have tendencies. And I knew how to get outside of him. But when you had him beat, you're like 3 yards, 4 yards ahead of him. And he's kind of playing a certain pace. And as soon as the ball comes, he would just close. And it was amazing how closing speed was. It's almost like saying I ran a 4.3. And most of the DBs, I could tell I was faster than. But when I played against him, I knew I wasn't faster than him. You could tell by his speed.
So how do you, because for you, I have to think you are relying on that 4.3 in most cases, right? But now here you are, again, we come back to beat the coverage, but here you are playing against a guy who can run that or maybe a tick faster. And so now you have to kind of change. Is it more technique at that point?
Absolutely. It's 100% technique, because as you mentioned, a superior athlete. But when you study film, I mean, one of my points in my framework is know the field. You study film and you watch a DB long enough, no matter how great they are, you will find a tendency. You'll find a habit. And Deion had one too. And so we knew how to maximize and take advantage of it. So, but still though, he was so good. He could recover so well, and that's.
Do you remember his habits? Do you remember what it was that you saw in film?
Yeah, Deion had a tendency where he didn't want to get beat outside. So if you started outside, he would always turn his hips. So
Hmm.
if you wanted to get an inside route in, you just start outside, he'd turn his hips, and you come underneath. And it was pretty much automatic, but he was hard to beat deep, you know?
Why didn't he want to get beat outside? He just didn't want to give up a home run?
Yeah, nobody wants to be on your highlight reel.
Yeah.
They don't. And he made it a point to make sure that you weren't going to run deep on him outside. But at the same time, he was so good. I can remember one time where we were it's 3rd and 5. June Jones calls a next slant for me. It's me and Deion, and I got a special release for him. I stutter him. I take off towards the cone. He turns, and I go, got him. I come underneath. By the time Bobby threw the ball, Deion had planted, spun around, and when I caught it, he knocked it out of my hand. And I'm watching the film the next day. I'm like, there's only one DB who can make that play.
Yeah. How do you avoid being turned into a DB yourself at your size? Because I would have thought that some coach somewhere in a practice would have said, JJ, you're a cover corner.
They tried at Lake Ridge. They tried at Lake Ridge, and I told them point blank, I do not want to tackle anyone. I don't mind getting tackled. I said, I do not want to tackle anyone. And so it lasted for a while, but my senior year, when we went into the playoffs, Coach Smythe asked me to play safety a couple times, and I did. And the first time I did, I had an interception. But that was really, my experience as far as playing DB. I'm a wide receiver, and that's the position I worked on from the little guy all the way till the NFL.
Yeah, I find that when I interview receivers, DBs, offensive players, defensive players, there's just a different mentality with the offensive and defensive players. Another guy it was from your era, Ronnie Lott was in that era. I'm not sure if he was a guy you got matched up against a lot, but much more physical player. Did you have more success against those kinds of guys, or did you like being matched up with the cover corner out there?
Well, I mean, because Lott was a safety, he was always covering an area, but I had an opportunity to run routes where I could run by him. But the challenge with Ronnie was he was just so physical, especially on run plays, because a lot of times my job was to take a beeline and cut Ronnie so that he couldn't get a free shot on the back. But Ronnie was one of the fastest safeties I ever saw who read run so fast, and he would dart towards the runner. I mean, he wanted the noise. He wanted the heat. So that was always the challenge. Like, okay, can I get over there fast enough to cut Ronnie? And then if you cut him, he didn't like it. He came after you the rest of the game.
Because I have to think, okay, so you talk about a guy like Jerry Rice or yourself. Okay, you're running routes hard because that makes that defender have to play honest, right? You'd much rather run off Ronnie Lott, right? Run down the seam and have him turn and have to run with you. But if he's reading run right away, now you're in a situation where you got to get in the way. And that is not a fun guy to get in the way. He or Kenny Easley, you don't want to get in the way of those guys.
Yeah, you don't. But the mentality in the NFL doesn't matter your weight. You better go do your job. And if my job was to go hit Ronnie Lott, I might not hit him and knock him out of the game, but you'd see me doing my job and getting in the way. And that's one of the things I realized when you got to the NFL. It wasn't just about running routes. It was all the little things. It was getting those blocks and hitting the blitz adjustments and understanding, every single play you have to bring your best because you're on film and you're constantly being evaluated. And there's always that guy behind you ready to take your job.
I love it. JJ, congratulations on the book. What is your hope for this book? Is it just getting it in as many hands as possible, or do you like the stories you hear from people afterwards when they read it, or what, tell us about that.
Yeah, the main goal is really just to empower people and give them a framework that they can use to accomplish anything they're striving for, and showing them that this is a proven system. I've used it and it's helped me as well. But to empower them and give them the confidence that anything is possible as long as you do these steps that are necessary. So I launched it last Monday, and John, I've been getting so many texts and emails because there's a lot of stories in there, a lot of stories. And I teach from every single story and make it applicable to the reader.
I think it's so interesting because I do think there are a lot of people that are a little lost, right? And they're wandering, and or maybe they're encountering struggles and they don't quite know where to start. And so having somebody tell them, hey, you first of all, you got to identify the issue, and you got to, what coverage are they in here? What are you facing? I mean, is that what it comes down to?
Yeah, it does. It's understanding what you're dealing with and knowing how to find the hole, find the opportunity, and have a game plan, a strategy, put in the reps because nobody's going to give it to you, and then be ready to execute, but be ready to make adjustments because life never runs the perfect play, right? We learn from the NFL. Yeah. There's always audibles, and you got to be able to adjust, and same applies in life.
Yeah. Have you run on the new Hayward Field track yet? Have you seen that thing?
I've seen it, but I haven't had the privilege to be on it. And every time I see it, I'm just like, oh man, it would have been so nice to compete there. And just, it's pretty amazing when you see it today.
Well, the cool thing, I went to the high school relays that were going on down there, and just went and watched the kids run. And, they've got drones flying around there, with a camera on it. So you can watch them in real time as they're running a 400, and there's not a bad seat in the house. And then the kids will tell you afterwards, they feel like they're running on clouds. I mean, it's like, the surface is just, next level, obviously. But you think you could get out and run? What would you run right now? Would you do a hurdle? Would you do 100, 200? What are we running?
Oh man, I don't know. I might be, I don't know. I might be good for a mile. My sprinting days are over, because I've had a couple of knee surgeries, and I'm just cardio, weights, just trying to stay healthy these days,
Do you still dream about sprinting, or do you dream about football? Like, if you have a sports dream, what is it?
It's running. It's usually running, because you think about talents and abilities we all have. I was gifted with the ability to run fast and quickness and jumping ability. And then I matched it with hard work, and you feel kind of invincible. And I think that is one of the struggles getting older, realizing that you can't do that anymore, And so that's the dream. I don't know how many times I dream where I'm running in a track meet at Oregon, and I'm finishing that senior year, and I'm getting that big jump in there.
JJ Birden, I appreciate you. Good luck with the book. Beatthecoverage.com if you want to grab it. Thanks, JJ.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Take care. And there he goes, JJ Birden. Such a great story. It's a story of mettle. It's a story of perseverance. It's a story of he's 140 pounds in high school. He has no college scholarship offers. He's watched his mom work as a welder. How do you not keep working if you're a kid who, is watching his mom come through the front door at the end of a hard work shift? He goes to Oregon. He scores one touchdown in college. He wasn't a star college athlete. He tracks in the background, but he goes to the combine. Marty Schottenheimer sees him run. Then he gets to the Cleveland Browns, and not a lot of success there. Then a knee injury. JJ Birden had every reason to quit. He had every reason to give it up. He had every reason, and the world telling him, this game isn't for you. You're too small. It's not working out. This is a funnel. Only the best of the best can get there. And what does he keep doing? He keeps working. He keeps grinding. He keeps focused on what's in front of him. I'm excited to read the book, but I in talking to him, it's really inspirational. First of all, if you got this far into the show, that. First of all, to hear that, and then to see a guy who finally gets the opportunity, can't sleep the night before the game, 188 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns against the Raiders in his one start to that point of his NFL career, all of his future hinging on this pivotal moment, and it doesn't swallow him up. Why? Because he's prepared. He's put in the work. He's done the work. He has the talent. He has the belief. He has people like his uncle in his corner who are behind him. And so then subsequently, you talk about, 5 more years in the NFL, 6 more years in the NFL, bunch of starts, bunch of accolades, and a true success story at 157 pounds in an NFL that to that point didn't have a bunch of smaller receivers running around. He was sort of the first of this wave that came into the league that we later saw. But really a cool story of resilience and focus. And I am going to check out the book, but really good stuff, inspiring stuff. And that's part of what I want to do with this show. If we're just being real, I want to bring you interviews and introduce you to people that maybe you hadn't heard talk before. And maybe you've heard JJ Birden, maybe you haven't, but I've interviewed him a couple of times over the years. And so I knew his story. I knew that his mom had worked as a welder. I knew that, he had been at Oregon at a time when, maybe the success wasn't there. And he just kept going. And, and he leaned on his speed, his God-given speed. And then what else? His resilience, his work ethic, all of that. Really good stuff from JJ Birden. Tell me in the comment section what you made of that interview. I'm excited. Coming up, the Monday mailbag. Olivia's off today. She'll be back on Wednesday's show. The Monday mailbag. I got a couple of questions that I will answer. If you would like to submit a question for the Monday mailbag, you can always drop it in the comments. Someone on our staff will grab it. Stick around. Great questions again this week in the Monday mailbag. If you'd like to submit a question to the Monday mailbag, you can go to johncanzano.com. That's the easiest and best way to do it. Grab a free subscription, grab a paid subscription, whatever works for you works for me. But you can submit questions through johncanzano.com. I'm happy to answer those. You can also follow me on the social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Yes, I'm on the TikTok. And find me on all those places. Just drop me a question, message me, tweet at me, whatever it works for you, works for me in that scenario. But great questions this week. First one coming from Nevada Aggie. Nevada Aggie wants to know, when will the Pac-12 announce the direct-to-consumer component of its media rights packages? For people who don't know, the Pac-12 is on CBS. The Pac-12 is on the CW. The Pac-12 is on USA Sports. The Pac-12 is also going to produce, using Pac-12 Enterprises, a bunch of Olympic sports, a bunch of non-revenue generating sports offerings. It's going to start with women's soccer. Those are the first things that are going to happen. The first competitions will be women's soccer. It will have a streaming component. It will have an app. The Pac-12 doesn't seem too worried about promoting this and marketing this. They say they're going to use their member institutions to kind of roll it out. I got the impression that Pac-12 Enterprises was working on this, and they're trying to get all the various sort of delivery mechanisms locked in before they roll it out to the public. It will not cost you anything. That's another reason why I think they're not pushing it too hard, is they're going, hey, we're just going to kind of roll this out for people interested in women's soccer. They're probably going to see it and hear about it just before these competitions begin. But I am expecting this anytime now. I would not be surprised if it rolls out this week. Would not be surprised to see the Pac-12 putting links out, creating an app and pushing that out. Again, they're not going to charge you for it. So I don't think there's a bunch of marketing that needs to go behind it. And I also think they know that the consumer that is interested in, or the viewer that is interested in women's soccer or volleyball or softball or whatever they're going to put on this platform, they know that that person is highly engaged and highly motivated and will find it and will go looking for it. But I don't think you're going to have to hunt very far. I think the individual schools will push it out. I think the league will push it out. I just think there hasn't been a whole bunch of incentive and motivation to get this out right now, get people signed up, because I think they know that the early sports offerings like women's soccer, that is going to be this first thing, are going to push a lot of that. Is a little bit of a misfire from my view. I would have pushed this out earlier in the summer. I would have gotten people signed up, but I think there's some method to the madness here with the Pac-12. I think they're focused on some other things. Again, the relaunch of the conference just happened July 1st. And so I think Pac-12 Enterprises has been working on this behind the scenes. But I am told, I said, is it going to be a streaming platform? Is it going to be a website? Is it going to be an app? And I was told all of the above. So I expect that. Second question coming from Baker Meow. Crazy who me? Baker Meow wants to know, as a Blazers fan, I have no desire to buy tickets while Tom Dundon owns the team. He's made it clear that he doesn't care about Portland and the fans, but I'm also concerned boycotting the games could better make his case to move. What should Blazer fans do next season? This is something I've thought about a lot, because there's part of me that believes that Tom Dundon's whole shtick, the act from the beginning, from the introductory news conference to now, has largely been about alienating the fan base. Does he want Portland to break up with him or make it, the appearance to make it easier for him to leave? Does he want to be able to justify leaving by looking over at his fellow NBA owners and going, look, no one's showing up to games. This is unsustainable. I can't make money here. That has crossed my mind. But I think the narrative on Portland is out there. I think the national media is doing a pretty good job, Bill Simmons included, of telling the world that Portland fans support their NBA team. You got a sellout streak of 800 plus games that was like the largest in all of professional sports, the longest running in all of professional sports. And so I think the narrative on Portland is out there, that this is a fan base that is very forgiving. This is a fan base that will come back and support a good product. And so I don't necessarily think that maybe a half a season or a season of fans being voting against Tom Dundon is going to change that narrative. But it is a slippery slope to climb on if you're a Blazer fan. On one hand, you got a team and you got players that you want to support. You got a product that you like. They made the playoffs last year. On the other hand, people can't stand this owner. He's turned people off. He's cheap. He's been terrible. This has been a horrific run for Blazer fans who were already anxious and wringing their hands when the team was sort of in this purgatory with Jody Allen as the trustee. I'm monitoring this. I think it's a fair question to ask, but I don't think that the world is going to judge Blazer fans based on the attendance this season. I think they'll look at the larger picture and the longer run. And if you're a Blazer fan, I think you got a lot to stand on and a lot of history that tells the world that you are a very supportive fan base. Final question. Clyde wants to know your prediction on when Adam Silver gets involved with the Trailblazers stalemate. Will he be behind the scenes or taking an active role? And would Tom Dundon grovel to get Phil Knight to help him out of this mess by buying the 20% option before 2028? I don't think Phil Knight's in a hurry to bail anybody out. And by the way, he becomes the answer to every question. Oh, there's a financial problem. Call Phil Knight. Portland State wants to build a football stadium. Call Phil Knight. Oregon State is going to lose their baseball coach. Call Phil Knight. It must be exhausting to be Phil Knight at Nike or Tim Boyle at Columbia. The phone must ring, or Peter Stott, if you're a Portland State fan. The phone just must ring incessantly with people going, help us out, bail us out, give us some money. It's got to be exhausting for those guys. But you raise a good point, Clyde, about Adam Silver. I don't know how he allowed this to get into this situation. There must not have been another great offer out there. I know the secondary offer for the Blazers was at $4 billion. And the Bafal family that owns the Thorns and owns the Portland Fire wanted to buy the Blazers too. And they were at $4 billion. This is at $4.25 billion for 80% of the team. So I don't think there was another great offer out there. And it probably is why Adam Silver's hands were tied in the beginning. But I've watched him very closely. And I think at some point he's got to exert himself. And I do think he's laying back right now, waiting to see what happens. I thought it was really interesting when he did go public that he didn't sort of hit Portland over the head and say, oh gosh, this is a terrible deal. This city better get its act together. No, he didn't do that. He didn't either go after his owner, Tom Dundon. That's one of his bosses. Adam Silver kind of played it down the middle and just said he was disappointed more hadn't happened, that the sides hadn't come together. I thought that was very strategic by a guy who prefers to use a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. At some point, though, Adam Silver's got to step up. Because the appearance here right now is that Tom Dundon bought the Blazers at a discount, $4.25 billion, instead of paying $7 billion or $8 billion for an expansion franchise. And yes, I know he kicked the tires on both Seattle and Vegas. And now he is looking to move them. He's looking at the portability of the franchise as a way to maximize his value. If I'm Adam Silver, this is not good for the league. Having a repeat of what happened in Seattle would be awful. And I think the other owners in the NBA just want to get to those expansion fees in Seattle and Vegas and make the register ring. So if you're Silver, I think you got to kind of nudge this along. But at some point, he's got to come out. He's got to come out and take a stand. He's got to tell Tom Dundon, make it work in Portland. Or he's got to come out and say, hey, Portland, if you don't get this deal done, this franchise could move. Like, Adam Silver's got to make a play here because sitting silent just looks weak. So I agree with you, Clyde. Like, at some point, Silver's got to step up. I have talked with league executives who tell me they expect Silver to do something at some point. Which side will he take? How will he play it? To this point, he has been very reluctant to come out and tell one of his owners, make it work. But I think it's interesting that he also hasn't hammered the city of Portland the way David Stern hammered the city of Seattle back in the day before the Sonics left. So I think Silver playing this very neutral to this point, and that is very telling to me and interesting to me. And it kind of tells me that Silver wants this to, resolve itself before he has to take a stand and make a stand. But I think in the 11th hour, we will hear from the NBA commissioner if it gets to that point. All right, make sure you like and subscribe. Get back here Wednesday for an all-new episode, and read me at johncanzano.com.